these other teams like Minnesota hanging in the balance. When is enough enough?
Yeah, and Lacey, it's such a good point, especially with what the Pittsburgh Steelers did, or I guess you could say did not do in last week's draft. They did not really go after a quarterback, despite us expecting them to early and often in the NFL draft. They did select Will Howard, of course, the quarterback out of Ohio State early in round number 6, but really not thinking of Will Howard more than likely as the starting quarterback or the face of the franchise in Pittsburgh. Art Rooney, the owner, of course, for Pittsburgh, did say last week on a radio show that he expects to hear from Aaron Rodgers very, very soon. What exactly that answer is going to be, what that means for Rodgers' football future, what it means for the Steelers, we shall debate. No new news around Aaron Rodgers at this moment, but some big news, Lacey Guy, early on this Tuesday morning. George Kittle telling Bussin' with the boys he has signed a contract extension to remain in San Francisco. 4 years, $76.4 million extension signed by Kittle. He has been in San Francisco for the entirety of his 8-year NFL career. After more than 1,100 receiving yards and 8 receiving scores a season ago, George Kittle will remain in San Fran. 4 years, $76.4 million deal, Joe. Just north of $19 million on annual average value, making George Kittle the highest paid tight end in National Football League history.
Yeah, and, deserving in terms of the productivity, a little bit banged up over the past couple of seasons, but a mainstay and a very important piece to the San Francisco 49ers offense. Let's not forget Brandon Ayuk coming off a major injury. Ricky Pearsall, year number 2, showed, bright spots, but we don't know what to expect from this offense moving forward. And if you're Brock Purdy, that's the security blanket. You talk about Brock Purdy's success, obviously with Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield in the short to intermediate passing game. You have George Kittle working over the middle for those dig routes and working on linebackers, and then that opens up everything over the top for those wide receivers. So we'll see how it progresses, but he's deserving. Even though you could get tight end help in the draft in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds, George Kittle is an added blocker as it relates to the rushing attack as well. So he deserved the money. As long as he's healthy, he's right up there with some of the best in the game. And we'll see if he can really live up to expectations and lead San Fran to an NFC championship.
There's no doubt about it, Joe. And he's 31 years old now. He will turn 32 during the 2025 NFL season. That's in October. A 5th-round pick out of Iowa back in 2017. Again, all 8 seasons of his NFL playing career have been with the 49ers. He came on very strong, 2 1,000-yard seasons in his first 3 years. But he is now backed that up after a few years dealing with injury, with 4 consecutive seasons of at least 14 games played. He has been a Pro Bowler in all 4 of those years. Back-to-back seasons, Lacey Guy, 2023 and 24, that connection established with Brock Purdy, where he has had more than 1,000 receiving yards. He's one of 5 tight ends in the history of the NFL. Of course, we have seen this position grow and grow over the last decade or 2, but he is one of 5 tight ends in the history of the National Football League with at least 4 seasons of 1,000 receiving yards. Travis Kelce has the most. He has 7. The 4 other guys, including Kittle, Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski, and Jason Witten, all with 4 seasons of 1,000 receiving yards. And Kittle is still doing it. 1,100 receiving yards last year and 8 receiving touchdowns. So, Joe, he is still producing at a very productive clip. That's one good sign for San Francisco this offseason. Trying to turn things around and make it look a little bit more optimistic than it has, of course, the last 2 off seasons, and certainly with the 6-11 season last year with the Niners, where injuries were a huge component of that conversation. That's one contract extension done. That's one deal signed, Lacey Guy. But of course, now the focus for the 49ers is going to be on extending quarterback Brock Purdy and what exactly that monetary value is looking like. The going rate for a quarterback now is $50+ million. We'll see if Brock Purdy gets that amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, 50, 48, 49, that's okay. If, I think we have problems, and you say, wait, enough is enough. If we're talking in the 60s, for Brock Purdy and a quarterback that hasn't won a Super Bowl, right? I think that's the biggest thing when we look at the going rate in terms of where we're at, mid-50s. You know, we talk about Jordan Love getting that type of money. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, but he's got a Super Bowl title. Joe Burrow made it to a Super Bowl, right? Same thing with Brock Purdy. So you could put him in that type of argument. But is he a pure passer? And, you know, if the game's on the line, do you want Brock Purdy? And is he worthy of the price tag? That's what the pundits and the skeptics will say. And that's where you have to say, okay, let's look at it. Is he a system guy or is he not a system guy? And I think that's where the debate comes in. I actually think he's a step above a system guy, but I don't put him in the same category, Ben, as Josh Allen, obviously Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, some of the younger quarterbacks that are getting huge money.
Yeah, and Lacey, that's the interesting thing. 9 quarterbacks around the National Football League made more than $50 million last season. When you look at where the QB salaries stand right now, again, the going rate for quarterbacks is $50+ million. You can agree with those QBs that receive it. That's where things stand. After a few contract extensions this offseason, Josh Allen joining the $50 million club at $55 million per year. So now 10 quarterbacks, Lacey Guy, north of $50 million. Notably, one of the quarterbacks who is not, that's Patrick Mahomes, based on the very large 10-year contract extension he signed now a couple of off seasons ago. Is Brock Purdy worthy of that? That's the debate. Is Brock Purdy going to receive that? I would say yes, just given what the market value is asking for right now. But, Joe, I think it's a pretty comfortable comparison to look at guys like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and say that's probably more around the echelon of where we see Brock Purdy at this moment. Not that it can't change, of course, entering his 4th year. And Baker and Sam are basically the guys that have proven you can find some of that quarterback value, $30, $35 million per year, and make them earn it in terms of those paychecks. Ultimately, I do believe Brock Purdy is going to sign a contract extension where that annual average value, the AAV, is $50 million at least. More on Football Full Circle comes your way in just a moment. Live right here on SportsGrid Radio.
Four out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin. He just gives that 5. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. Consumers across the U.S. will still be able to buy higher ethanol blend E15 gasoline this summer, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. The emergency waiver issued by the EPA prevents retailers in most states from having to stop selling E15 gasoline on May 1st. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin signaled that he plans to keep issuing waivers through September 15th. The U.S. government is reversing the termination of legal status for international students around the country after many filed court challenges against the Trump administration crackdown, according to federal officials. The records in a federal student database maintained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement had been terminated in recent weeks. Judges across the U.S. had already issued orders temporarily restoring students' records in dozens of lawsuits challenging the terminations. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
One of life's greatest mysteries has finally been solved.
Who let the dogs out? Spruce, spruce, spruce.
It's Spruce, the new hard-working, worry-free weed and grass killer that's safe for use around people and pets. When used as directed, spray the leaves for visible results in just 1 hour and dead weeds in just 1 day. You spray, they play. Weeds die by the next day. Find Spruce wherever weed killers are sold.
Life insurance. Why are you putting it off? Can't afford it? Too much hassle? Think you don't need it? There's lots of excuses for putting off life insurance. But if you weren't there, who would pay the mortgage and other bills? With Ethos, you could be covered in 10 minutes and boom, family protected. Ethos, fast and easy online term life insurance. Up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam. Some policies as low as $1 a day. Answer a few health questions and get your free quote at ethos.com/apply. That's ethos.com/apply.
There's something you should know and always remember. SportsGrid does not increase luck. We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck, go find a horseshoe. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. So, Lisi, guys, we continue to look at what is happening around the National Football League. Some big quarterback news we still expect at some point this offseason. Contract extensions for Brock Purdy, contract extensions for other notable players around the NFL. Looking at you, Dallas and Micah Parsons. Looking at you, Cincinnati and Trey Hendrickson. And, of course, Lisi Guy, some quarterback news around Aaron Rodgers. That's basically what we have left here to deal with this offseason. Because now that the NFL draft has come to a close, it's kind of figuring things out from the rookie perspective. Those additions on these rosters will go to the rookie minicamp. We'll go through OTAs. We'll get ready for training camp in July. We're going to have some moments on the NFL offseason calendar. In about 2 weeks, we've got the schedule release date around the National Football League. But it does really quiet down now that the draft is over and through.
Yeah, I mean, you're right? So we're set now. Now, everything's set, and now we have position battles taking place, obviously, in late July, early August, and that'll dictate maybe some more of the odds, and we'll see if there's any key injuries that take place in terms of minicamp. But when you look at the draft and you look at, just the body of work that some of the teams did offensively and defensively, some teams really separated themselves. Some teams really helped their cause. Some teams really allowed them, based off the talent that they got, to potentially challenge for an AFC or an NFC championship. And I think we discussed that, throughout the first couple of rounds of the draft on Thursday and Friday. But when you look back and you just think about grades and think about teams that, have pretty good nucleuses and just now have, role players or plug and play type of guys, I think Atlanta's just one of those teams that when you just look at the division, you look at, needs. We know they have the offense, right? Assuming everything is constant and consistent on the offensive side of the ball, they really help themselves from the defensive side. Michael Williams for San Francisco, dominant. Cleveland to get defensive help, we have to see what the offense looks like. But to get Mason Graham and to get those playmakers, that helps them move forward. Arizona did a great job, right? Just Nolan Smith and knowing what they have. I think those are the three teams for me that when we look at jumps, Ben, we know that the top teams are there, but these teams could really make a push for potentially a wild card, and Atlanta and Arizona are two teams in the NFC that have great value right now.
Yeah, and Lisa, Guy, it's not just a playoff price, a divisional number. Are we expecting these teams to contend for a Super Bowl? Perhaps not, but you can tie it very immediately to a win total. The Cardinals have a win total of 8.5. The under a slight bit more juice at -120. The Falcons a win total of 7.5. The over has the juice at -140. You are looking at these teams now with their additions through the NFL draft and this offseason to be better, to improve season over season, year over year, entering 2025. Of course, the Falcons entered last year with a win total of 9.5, hoping for double-digit wins, led by Kirk Cousins. It's completely different in just 1 year. It is now Michael Penix Jr.'s show in the A. Lisi, it's really interesting when you talk about quarterbacks and where they were drafted. Last year, 6 QBs, all taken in the first round, all taken in that top 12. When you're drafted that early on now in the NFL, you are expected to be that day one, week one starter, if not week one, early on. We've got a couple of those spots now for 2025. At least we saw some markets not opened up just yet for a couple of quarterback battles throughout the offseason. Who would be that week one starter? You hit big plus money betting on the Pittsburgh Steelers going with Justin Fields, whether it was the injury to Russell Wilson or just the determination of Fields taking that preparation during training camp. You cashed that ticket. I think we can do a couple of similar things here when it comes to 2025, and some of those rookie signal callers that were drafted this past week. I would say, Joe, it's minus 5,000, if not stronger than that. Almost like the price for Cam Ward to go first overall at minus 50,000, that he starts week number 1 for Tennessee in 2025.
Yeah, there's no reason if you're Tennessee to delay his type of progress.
Yeah.
Right? You gain valuable experience from week 1 through week 17. You're in a major rebuild. You had the number 1 overall pick, barring any type of injury or any type of minor injury. You start him from week 1 and you just let the chips fall where they may. That's the bottom line. And you see the type of progression that Jaden Daniels had from the start of the year just to the end of the year, how much more confident he was, how much more mature. Forget the type of productivity. We're just talking about being able to start an NFL game. That is first and foremost for the Tennessee Titans. Right now, They don't have an offensive identity. We still don't know what the identity is, right? We were shocked that they went and got Tony Pollard in the offseason last year. They had Tajay Spears, a similar type of running back. Are they a 5-wide type of offense, or are they more pro-style, more balanced? Only time will tell. But the biggest thing is you get Cam Ward ready, allow him to develop, put the pieces around them. And again, they're still about a year or two away from being that type of offense. It's much different than what Washington had. Washington had playmakers at the wide receiver position. We don't know what Tennessee has, but allowed Cam Ward to cook and be ready for year 2. Whether Callahan is there or not, it doesn't matter. The biggest thing for the organization is Cam Ward's ready in 2026.
5.5 is the win total for Tennessee, Joe. It's an interesting time for the Titans. The over has the juice at minus 140. There has been a tremendous amount of change in Nashville the last few years. Of course, Mike Vrabel fired at the end of 2023. Brian Callahan becomes the head coach, but he was not hired by current GM Mike Borgonzi in his first offseason with Tennessee. He was hired by the former GM Rand Carthen, who is no longer there in Nashville. That's often an interesting pairing when you have a GM that did not hire the head coach, but the GM drafted the quarterback first overall. Could the head coach in Brian Callahan be the odd man out? What's really fascinating, Joe, is Callahan is seen as the offensive mind, the former OC in Cincinnati. We didn't really get that full picture with Will Levis under center in 2024. We'll see what Cam Ward has in 2025. More around the rookie QB class up next.
There's smart and there's not smart. Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Keep it here and win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1986, Roger Clemens strikes out 20 Mariners.
Clemens has set a major league record for strikeouts in a game. What a performance by the kid from the University of Texas.
Clemens won 7 Cy Young Awards in his career and 2 World Championships. The Rocket has 354 career wins, but remains isolated from the Hall of Fame because of steroid allegations. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
RoboBee, an amazing technological achievement by Harvard University's Microbiotics Laboratory, is a 1-inch long, 80-gram synthetic insect intended to intelligently swarm and pollinate like real bees.
Frankly, the masses wouldn't appreciate it.
Which up to now has only had one problem.
I don't have any legs and can't land without killing myself.
However, due to a new Harvard evolutionary biology breakthrough study of insect locomotion,
bees got knees.
RoboBee can land with the graceful legs of the crane fly. One additional great feature of the RoboBee?
Huh?
No stinger. Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Moneyline.
I like where Cleveland went here. Now you add the running game with Quinshon Judkins. You already got some solid wide receivers. I just thought it was interesting that Judkins went over Henderson. But Fannin Jr., you want to talk about a guy that doesn't block all that much? Neither does Njoku. You got 2 wide receivers at tight end with big bodies out there, baby. I love it.
Catch Moneyline with Donnie Rightside and Kevin Walsh. Weekdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. There comes a point when the chips are down. To coin a phrase, when the only thing you can do is stop and wait. Do you want to face that moment prepared or rely on luck?
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
We expect Cam Ward to be the Week 1 starter for the Tennessee Titans in 2025. The win total in Nashville is 5.5. It is year number 2 under Brian Callahan, Joe. But really in his rookie season, it was defined by Brian Callahan probably being angrier than every other fan in Tennessee at the quarterback play of Will Levis and or Mason Rudolph. So it's almost like his de facto rookie season as a head coach once again. If things do not work out, though, to the point we were highlighting, Joe, right before the commercial break, Brian Callahan is going to be easily dispatched of if that is the decision. Mike Borgonzi, the new GM in Nashville, was not the guy in the front office to hire Brian Callahan. That was before Borgonzi's time, but Borgonzi was the guy who inherited the number 1 overall selection and drafted Cam Ward. So if things don't work out this year, if they feel that Cam Ward's development in the National Football League is being hindered even in the slightest, it's going to be very easy to dismiss Brian Callahan getting ready for 2026.
Yeah, I mean, you go from Mike Vrabel to a young head coach in Brian Callahan with no offensive explosiveness. One weapon, you could say Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley, if you want to give him that, at the end of his career. And the quarterback position was just null and void with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. You can move on. You can afford to move on from Brian Callahan. What coach would move the needle to potentially come in and just revamp the offense? We'll see what this season brings, because it's always a young offensive coordinator. But I do believe they need an offensive mind to help Cam Ward's progression. We see Dave Canales helping Bryce Young. It wasn't pretty at first, but allowing him to sit, benching him, allowing him to come back. He really progressed in Dave Canales' system. What do? They go out in the draft. They get him wide receiver help. They sign Hunter Renfrow and some wide receivers in free agency. And all of a sudden now the offense looks pretty bright heading into this season. That's what you need for Cam Ward. You don't want to hurt his development by handcuffing him. You want to actually throw the playbook at him, see if he can handle it, and see what you get, and then take the pieces and say, you know what, is he the right head coach to lead this type of offense? If not, you move on and you get somebody else that can elevate the team. They're not going anywhere, Ben. I don't know if they get over the 5.5. Cam Ward could will them to potentially 6 wins, but that's asking a lot with this roster.
Yeah, it feels pretty reasonable and pretty fair that 5, 6, 7 might be the cap for Tennessee this year. Not exactly the hardest division in the AFC South, but really doesn't feel like more than 7 wins at absolute most. Again, it was hard to evaluate Brian Callahan a season ago. This year you get a better picture, and if things do not work out quickly, he is probably sent on his way. Lisi Guy, of course, only one QB, only one other QB drafted in round number 1 in 2025. That was Jackson Dart, the New York Giants trading back into the first round with the Texans at 25th overall in drafting Dart. But of course, what made it so interesting about the Giants' draft plans at the QB spot in the first place, they had spent some good offseason change on Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Yesterday, I set the over-under at 2.5. Probably some juice on the under for the amount of games that Shedeur Sanders starts in his rookie campaign in 2025 for Cleveland. Joe, if I were to ask you an over-under or when exactly in the season Jackson Dart could potentially start his first game for New York, what would you say?
I would say right around, if you're the Giants, again, right around Halloween, November 1st. Why would you wait? The only reason why they would wait, Ben, is if they're in a wild card chase, because they have to save their job. So if they're 6-4 and they're fighting for a wild card, then probably he won't start. But again, you draft a young quarterback. And that seems like that was the fail-safe for the organization, right? Like they sold Mara and they sold the ownership. Hey, we got the quarterbacks to lead us to potentially 9 or 10 wins. If that doesn't work, don't worry about it. We have a quarterback in the waiting that we could develop, and that's going to be the plan for next year when we're still there. And that's how you sell it. We'll see if they get there. But for Jackson Dart to reach up and grab the guy in 21 overall, or 23 overall, you got to start him this year. You can't let him wait 25.
Yeah, 25th overall is where he was drafted. But I do hear the point, Lisa guy, and I think what you laid out in terms of context for Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen, that's the really interesting component of this conversation. So we'll discuss further. I think Jackson Dart starts a handful of games in 2025. More of that next.
The winning edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. NBA playoffs, a couple of controversial non-calls. The Lakers' Luka Doncic was fouled with 33 seconds left in Game 4 of their series against Minnesota. Detroit's Tim Hardaway Jr. fouled on a three-point shot as time expired against the Knicks in Game 4. Both games were decided by 1 point. Pistons coach J.B. Bickerstaff.
The guy leaves his feet. There's contact on Tim Hardaway's jump shot. I don't know any other way around it. There's contact on his jump shot. The guy leaves his feet. He's at Timmy's mercy. And I repeat, there's contact on his jump shot.
NBA playoffs last night. The Cavaliers beat Miami 138-83 to sweep the series in 4 games. The 55-point win, the most lopsided in NBA playoff history. Cleveland will face either Indiana or Milwaukee in the semifinals. The Cavaliers have home court advantage the first game no earlier than this Saturday. Save big when you bundle auto and home, renters, or condo with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Spring into deals and save on seasonal projects at Lowe's. Right now, get 4 select 8-pack annuals for just $10. Plus, get a free 60-volt Toro battery when you purchase a select 60-volt Toro electric mower. Don't miss out on these fresh spring savings. Shop in-store or online today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/30 while supplies last. Actual plant size and selection varies by location. Excludes Alaska.
One of life's greatest mysteries has finally been solved.
Who let the dogs out? Spruce.
It's Spruce, the new hard-working, worry-free weed and grass killer that's safe for use around people and pets. When used as directed, spray the leaves for visible results in just 1 hour and dead weeds in just 1 day. You spray, they play. Weeds die by the next day. Find Spruce wherever weed killers are sold.
You're listening to SportsGrid, spreading the winning edge far and wide. Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app.
Face it.
The winning edge is everywhere. Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. It is FFC. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Lisi guy Jackson Dart, drafted 25th overall at the end of the opening round. The Giants trading back into round number 1 to get their quarterback of the future? Question mark. And I think one of the fascinating things, Joe, that we had discussed at the end of the 2024 NFL season, when the Giants cost themselves the opportunity to control their own destiny early in the draft with that first overall pick by beating the Colts week 17 in a game they had no business winning, but did. What would the Giants do this offseason? Because after Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen were brought back for 2025, they were kind of like dead men walking, right? They would get the opportunity to be back and turn things around, but it was pretty plain to see they were not exactly going to be set up to be an 11-win football team to make the playoffs and contend for a divisional crown. But Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll wouldn't be going down without a fight. So what do they do at the quarterback spot this offseason? Well, it was pretty clear early on they were not going to draft somebody at number 3 overall. So they signed Jameis Winston, and then even after that, they spend more than $20 million on Russell Wilson, although that contract really kind of is tied to a lot of incentives. Then they trade back into the tail end of the first round to select Jackson Dart. I think, Lisi, as you said, and what they're trying to show to the Mara family is that, hey, we still have eyes on the future. Even if in 2025 we go 7-10, we are still putting the building blocks in place to have this be our gig, to have this be our show for next season, 2026, 2027, and beyond. But I still think, Joe, the overwhelming sentiment is that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have one more year. And unless things go crazy for the Giants, and they are a double-digit win team and a playoff team, that's probably that, even if the quarterback position, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and now Jackson Dart, shows some promise. But with the idea you kind of need to also be thinking about the future, that's why I think Dart will start 3, 4, 5 games for the New York Giants this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think, the biggest thing is they have a vision. You could say, you could sell the organization, hey, we have a vision, as opposed to last year where you went by the seat of your pants and you lived and died with Daniel Jones. And then when he got hurt, it was like, okay, Drew Lock, dead and buried, right? We're going for the worst record in football. And at that particular time, you could have made the argument that Daboll should have been let go, but they allowed him to come back. Shane has pulled some strings, and at the end of the day, I told you this, I don't think they have drafted all that bad from an offensive perspective. They get Tyrone Tracy. They had Neighbors. They had, Wan'Dale Robinson.
Sure.
Theo Johnson. We'll see if he could develop into an elite tight end. But there are pretty good pieces offensively. It's just that, think about the teams they're competing with. They're potentially the worst team in the division. As bad as the Cowboys are, they're still better when healthy than the New York Giants. That's the concern, right? What does Abdul Carter bring this team, and can he elevate them to potentially 8 wins? Because if Abdul Carter is like Lawrence Taylor, or the way he wants to be, then Jackson Dart potentially is not going to start a game until late December then, Ben.
Great point, Lacey guy. And I do think Abdul Carter, regardless of the offense, regardless of the QB spot, I think he is going to be incredibly successful very early on in his rookie season. I think when you look at the Giants, who had a really good D-line a year ago, the addition of Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence in the middle, looking like one of the better D tackles, interior D linemen in the NFL. There's a chance now, Joe, with the addition of Abdul Carter, that Giants defense is improving. But New York enters 2025 with the worst win total around the NFL. Again, we have mentioned it a few times. 4 teams currently have a win total at 5.5. But depending on where the juice resides, you can kind of determine what the odds makers think is most likely, and thus who has the worst record. The Giants have the most juice on the under, -140. The Browns, -135, juice to the under. So not the greatest disparity, but the Giants slightly worse. We are not expecting New York to be an 8, 9, 10 win football team with the cast and crew they have here right now. If they overexceed expectation, Joe, because Russell Wilson, as we have seen him at times, plays well enough and the defense is solid and the Giants are on track to win 8, 9 games, maybe staying just enough afloat in the playoff hunt entering late November, early December, then we're probably not going to see Jackson Dart at all or as early as we might anticipate. If the Giants do live up to what the preseason expectations are, they're around a 4, 5, 6 win football team, then I think we see Jackson Dart, as you laid out, by early November, Halloween, week 8, 9, 10, something of the sort, that if things are going poorly for Daboll and Schoen, they at least give that sliver of hope of what can happen if their guy, who they drafted in the first round at the quarterback spot, does provide that promise. Now, with all of that being said, Joe, that's just the number of games we think Jackson Dart could potentially start at maximum. Not exactly what Jackson Dart would do in those games that he starts, where I think both you and I are rather hesitant that Jackson Dart was worthy of first-round consideration and will be successful right away in his NFL career.
Yeah, so let me throw a curveball into the equation, Ben, okay? Because this shows you how bad of a decision it is, okay? Let's say they start Russell Wilson this year, and let's say they start 8-2, and they finish the season, I don't know, 11-6, okay? And they make a wild card, right? Oh, and they lose in the first round, to whoever, right? What do you do then? Because now, right, you're in the same situation that you were back with Daniel Jones, where they won a playoff game, they lost to the Eagles, they had a quarterback that they weren't sure that they wanted to, move on from or go forward with, and they signed him to the extension, and they're in quarterback purgatory, right? By getting these two veterans showed how dumb of a move that really was, as opposed to just taking a quarterback number 3 overall or trading back and getting Jackson Dart. And the reason why I say that is because now they did it to save their jobs solely. I'm not saying that Abdul Carter wasn't the right pick. What I'm saying is the two offseason moves of Jameis and Russell Wilson were to save both Shane and Dable's ass. And because they did that, if they succeed, now that they're done, because then they can only go back.
Or, right, you are hoping that in this case, Jackson Dart is the real deal. Because in that scenario, Joe, you're not drafting top 5. You're not drafting top 10. We expect it to be a better quarterback class next year, but we always have high hopes for a quarterback class year in, year out in the NFL draft. And then by February, things actually start to take shape with the reality of how good that quarterback class is going to be. But you're right. It could leave the Giants in that weird limbo area again if they're even mediocre, Joe. Let alone a playoff berth. I actually think that would speak to Brian Daboll's acumen as a head coach, that 2 times in 4 years, he would be a playoff coach during his tenure with New York. What if they're 8-9, miss out on the postseason, 7-10, miss out on the postseason? So now they're no longer drafting top 5, and yet they're drafting 11th, and they're kind of in this weird spot again, where do they go after a quarterback, or are they just trusting Jackson Dart, maybe based on a limited sample size on what he can do?
Right, but then you give him no starts. That's the problem. Like, no matter what.
Exactly, yeah.
So Jackson Dart goes through the whole season not getting any game experience, no matter what they do. 8-9, 10-7, 11-6. He gets no starts to start 2026.
Yeah, that would be a good point, right? It depends on how you get to those 7, 8, 9 wins if the Giants even get there. If they don't come close and they're more around that win total of 5.5, that just means the more time we see Jackson Dart on the playing surface. More on FFC comes your way next.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie. Just saying. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. Consumers across the U.S. will still be able to buy higher ethanol blend E15 gasoline this summer, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. The emergency waiver issued by the EPA prevents retailers in most states from having to stop selling E15 gasoline on May 1st. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin signaled that he plans to keep issuing waivers through September 15th. The U.S. government is reversing the termination of legal status for international students around the country after many filed court challenges against the Trump administration crackdown, according to federal officials. The records in a federal student database maintained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement had been terminated in recent weeks. Judges across the U.S. had already issued orders temporarily restoring students' records in dozens of lawsuits challenging the terminations. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
It's Macy's Friends and Family Sale. Hurry in for insider deals on must-have spring styles from your favorite brands, like an extra 30% off new dresses, handbags, and accessories from Karl Lagerfeld Paris, Donna Karan New York, Avec La Fille, and more. Plus, get 15% off fragrances, beauty, and skincare, too. It's not only the best time to shop for yourself, it's also the best time to shop early for Mother's Day. Don't miss Friends and Family starting tomorrow at Macy's. Savings off regular and already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
Okay, raise your hand if you want to make your life a little bit easier. Great. Now raise your other hand if you like to be comfortable. Perfect. Now that you have both hands raised, imagine putting on your shoes. And that, folks, right there is your answer to an easier, more comfortable life. Go hands-free with Skechers Slip-ins. This is footwear you don't need your hands to put on. They can be raised in the air, and you can just step it and go. Why don't you experience what people can't stop talking about? Life-changing Skechers Slip-ins. Get your Slip-ins at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Remember when you were thankful you could just get AM and FM?
Things have progressed.
Now even an app on your phone can give you a 21st century thrill with that little drop of heaven called
the deposit notification.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
So we've talked about the quarterbacks that were drafted in round one and when might we see them to start their rookie careers in the National Football League in 2025. How about the QBs after? Joe, at 40th overall, our only quarterback taken in round two was the 25-year-old out of Louisville via Texas Tech, via Oregon, in Tyler Shuck that spent 7 years playing collegiately. He will be 26 years old come September. The September of his rookie season in the National Football League. And Joe, there's been a lot of conversation around New Orleans at the quarterback spot this offseason. Derek Carr, the shoulder issue. What does New Orleans know? Carr was giving a guest sermon at a church in Las Vegas on Sunday, said the Saints are well aware of the shoulder issue. They've been in conversation, nothing to worry about. They are forming a plan to move forward. But of course, when you have that, you have the situation of drafting Tyler Shuck early in round number two. You have a new regime, a new head coach in Kellen Moore on the offensive side of the football. Lisi, knowing what New Orleans has in the QB room at this moment, when do you think Tyler Shuck starts in 2025?
If he's the guy, you start him week one. Again, another team that has no reason not to sign or start Tyler Shuck. He is the face of the franchise. You know, Derek Carr, whether he's healthy or not, you can't rely on him right now. You have to make a call. What's the best fit for the organization moving forward? They have two younger quarterbacks that they tried to work out last year, and Hayner and Spencer Rattler. It didn't pan out. You got to get Tyler Shuck experience. And let's call this what it is. People bash Bo Nix because of his age. It worked out just fine for Denver in the long haul. I don't understand what this mindset is. Oh, the guy's 26. If you get 8 years out of the guy, he's still only 34 years old. That's really young in terms of quarterbacks that we see, and especially since we're chasing garbage type of talent into Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, respectively, close to 40. So, I mean, explain what this mindset is in the NFL. The rookie contract is a 5-year deal. So it's not like the guy's 36. The kid's 26. If you get a 10-year shelf life off of him, that's not a bad run. I don't understand this mindset. It's stupidity. It really is.
Listen, I agree, right? You're hoping for that. You're hoping for multiple contracts. Theoretically, Joe, Tyler Shuck could be playing past his peak in that second deal, where you're hoping that probably comes for your rookie quarterback in deal number 3, deal number 4. I hear it, though. I think if you told the Saints right now, hey, this Tyler Shuck guy is going to be your starting quarterback for the next 8 to 10 years at a pretty good level, they'd sign up for that point blank right here, right now. I bring up the age more so as the idea of he is not a developmental piece. He is not a project to stash away for the next few years to learn behind Derek Carr. That's not why you draft a guy when he is 25 years old. Now, Derek Carr, unlike the situation we talked about with the Giants or some other organizations this offseason, they didn't sign Carr this offseason or last offseason. They signed him back in 2023. Now, he is still under contract, Joe, through the end of next year, not even this upcoming season, through the end of 2026. His cap number this year, north of $20 million. So you certainly have some financial obligations to Derek Carr. But do you have playing obligations to Derek Carr? That is a different story. Lisi, I think if we were to set the odds right now, week 1 starting quarterback for New Orleans, it would probably look not quite as hefty as Russ versus Justin Fields when that market opened up last off season. But I'd probably make Derek Carr a minus 275 favorite, minus 250 favorite to be the week 1 starter in New Orleans, assuming the shoulder is not something that is devastating from the injury perspective. So you're telling me, though, if I set it, let's say minus 275 for Derek Carr, plus 220 for Tyler Shuck to be the week 1 starter for New Orleans, you would bet that plus money price.
I would because, again, shoulder, what's the shoulder situation? Is he going to mask it? That's a part of it, just the way, when he had the calf injury for us, you're like, oh, here we go, right? Same thing with Derek Carr. If it's a shoulder and he's got to throw the football and he can't get any velocity on it, this can linger all the way to November. So I'd rather take the shot on Shuck, knowing that maybe Carr's still not healthy and he'll mask it as much as he can to try and be under center week number 1. So we'll see. I mean, do I believe Tyler Shuck is the best option for the team to win games this year? No. But he's the best option to get them ready for 2026. Knowing what they have from an offensive perspective. Kamara's at the end of the road. Olave's banged up. They don't have elite wide receiver talent. They have to develop it. And the defense is absolutely atrocious. And it hasn't been at an elite level, since what, about a year and a half, 2 years ago? So at the end of the day, why not start the rookie?
And Lisi Guy, again, if you are getting rid of Derek Carr, it's probably not going to come at any stage this offseason. If he were to be released with a post-June 1st designation next summer, you're still into dead money of about $19 million. The cap for the Saints is not good. They don't have a ton of financial flexibility or freedom, but that doesn't mean you have to play the guy if you believe Tyler Shuck presents more on the field. Lisa Guy, who starts a game first for the Cleveland Browns? Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders?
Shedeur Sanders, no way. No way Dylan Gabriel. And I know Dylan Gabriel, obviously with the velocity, 72 fastest at the Senior Bowl, but I say Shedeur over Dylan. Dylan body size, I don't think he can cut it in the NFL. I think he's too frail and not big enough.
Does Dylan Gabriel ever start a game at quarterback for the Browns?
No.
I wonder, right? Because they're infatuated with Dylan Gabriel, and they ended up with Shedeur Sanders, who clearly they believe in enough. But they drafted Gabriel over Sanders in a couple of spots early in round 3 as in comparison to round number 5. I do wonder, Joe. I really do wonder. Do you think we see any of the other rookie QBs starting in 2025? That will be a conversation for another time. Probably not. Like Jalen Milroe's not starting in Seattle. He might be used.
Right.
Yeah.
Used in
You can talk about that up next. Yeah. We have guests coming into the studio for some interviews. I got to run out. Joe Lisi takes you home on FFC next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Imagine combining the exciting investment opportunity of cryptocurrencies with the power of artificial intelligence to maximize your IRA, 401k, or other investment funds. Listen, if you're looking for ways to accelerate your retirement growth, Block Trust IRA has market-leading strategies and solutions for all levels of investors, from $1,000 to millions. And they partner with Bitcoin Magazine's #1 crypto trading fund in the world to maximize your returns. Plus, their team of IRA specialists is here to help you roll over your IRA or qualified retirement account to the new world of cryptocurrency investments. So make this free call right now to set up your account and learn more.
800-434-5313. 800-434-5313. 800-434-5313. That's 800-434-5313.
It's stark but true. You can either listen to SportsGrid for strategies, odds, and more, or you can pay your bills by digging in your couch cushions for change. Just be sure to wear gloves.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Back on Football Full Circle, Ben and I left off talking about the quarterbacks, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck. Which one would potentially maybe see some action come week number 1? I don't believe Jalen Milroe will win over the job over Sam Darnold, but to Ben's point and what we brought up in terms of the end of the commercial break, Jalen Milroe can be utilized in terms of RPO sets. You're talking about a dynamic running back at the quarterback position, takes games over. If you thought Jaden Daniels was very explosive as a runner, Jalen Milroe might be a better overall runner than Jaden Daniels. He's a bigger version of Jaden Daniels, goes around 6'2", 6'3", about 215, 220 pounds, workout warrior, runs a 4.3 40. So when you look at Seattle and you look at the mindset about what this team looks like in 2025, yes, they do have an experienced quarterback. They lose DK Metcalf. They have JSN there, Zach Charbonnet. We know about the physicality in the offensive line. When Seattle did have success in the middle part of the season, and towards the end, they were running the football consistently and working off of play action. They shored up the offensive line. Can they run it consistently? We'll see. I think they can. And more importantly, Jalen Milroe now, in terms of red zone opportunities, gives this team an added dimension as it relates to the quarterback. So can Milroe beat out potentially Sam Darnold? He can, but it's going to take a miracle. It would take an injury to Sam Darnold potentially in the preseason, and where Milroe then is just game ready due to preseason snaps, then he would be the starter week number 1. Tyler Shuck is a little bit different. When you look at that type of situation, you look at the overall situation for Kellen Moore, they are in a major rebuild. They have no wide receiver talent outside of Chris Olave. They did take on some free agent signings, but it's not to elevate this offense to challenge the likes of Green Bay and the LA Rams and Arizona from an offensive perspective, teams potentially that they'll be battling with outside the division and potentially for a wild card. So if you're Tyler Shuck and you're Kellen Moore, more importantly, you want to get Tyler Shuck game ready potentially for year number 2. You're going to be there 3 or 4 seasons. You want to try to get your offensive philosophy in place. A lot of scouts were high on Tyler Shuck coming into the draft class at the combine. I just don't see it. He started his career in Oregon, then transferred to Texas Tech, did have some good success with Joey McGuire and that Red Raider rushing attack with Taj Brooks. He was utilized not just in terms of the passing attack. He did put up numbers, but he was utilized in terms of the RPO game as well. Transfers with Jeff Brom in Louisville, puts up dynamic numbers in terms of the ACC. Faced, I want to say, marginal average competition. Did step up in some games against Notre Dame and some of the tougher opponents, but still at times was turnover prone in big spots, didn't elevate and potentially lead his team to victory. So that's going to be where Tyler Shuck needs progression. He struggles sometimes reading coverage, struggles sometimes forcing passes into double coverage, and that's what he needs to work on. Hopefully with Kellen Moore, he does get better. I think when you look at other teams that really benefited from the draft, I brought up Arizona. Arizona gets Walter Nolan. They get Will Johnson, 2 defensive players that potentially can elevate this team to challenge the likes of San Francisco, to challenge the likes of the LA Rams. They've shown progression. They sort of plateaued year number 3 with Gannon, right? They get to 7 wins. They were on the outside looking in for potentially a wild card, needed to get that win against Carolina, gets pushed to the limit. They lose it in overtime. They have the pieces from the offensive perspective. They needed to get plug-and-play type of players defensively. Walter Nolan is a dominant edge rusher. We talked about the physicality. We talked about how dominant Ole Miss was in terms of run support. Walter Nolan was the mainstay of that front 7. You're talking about a guy that will force double teams. He's a player that's very good, has great technique, has a great motor, and steps up in big matchups. Dominated certain games in the SEC last year. That's what you want to see if you're Gannon and this team moving forward. Let's not forget, you talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. in year number 2, a great tight end in Trey McBride, an above-average running back in James Conner. Kyler Murray, as long as he doesn't turn the football over, has the potential to elevate this team to 9 or 10 or even 11 wins this season. So we'll see what transpires. I like the value on Arizona in terms of the NFC. We'll be back tomorrow breaking down more NFL draft, more offseason coverage right here on Football Full Circle. For Ben Stevens, Danny Ohlers, I'm Lisi. We'll see you tomorrow.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.